You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Joining us now live from the White House, Kellyanne Conway, former campaign manager, Donald J. Trump for president, engineering that victory. Kellyanne Conway, actually, when I was chairman of Virginia, she was my boss. Great person to work for. She's the best. And also, she is a senior counselor and advisor to President Trump in the White House. Kellyanne, great to have you with us.
Hey, I've been waiting. How are you?
It's on our end. I'm doing fantastic.
I heard some of your interview with Sam Nunberg, and then I was waiting. I said, I've been left at the altar here by John Fredericks.
Oh, my goodness. I would never do that, Kellyanne, and thank you. Hey, guys.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. Before we start getting into politics and everything, how's your family? How's your daughters?
Oh, thank you. I have a son and 3 daughters. I dropped my son off at his first day of high school today, John.
Oh, wow.
That's first and foremost in my life, my 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a 4th grade and 6th grade daughter start yesterday. Son started high school today, and his twin sister will start high school next week. So all's great in my life. Thank you for asking. Well, God bless them. Pray for them and a great school year.
I will, and it's an exciting time when you go into high school. My son, our youngest son, Joseph, started high school a week ago in Southeast Virginia. So
fantastic.
And of course, I have to tell this story when you're on, and then we'll get to politics and all the business. But this really shows a type of person Kellyanne is. They invited me. We're big Astro fans, everybody, as all my audience knows. And Kellyanne invited us when the Astros came to the White House when they won the World Series. They came in 2018. A lot of the other teams don't come. Astros came. All of them came. They got his seats up front. Kellyanne comes in now. There's all these dignitaries there. The Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, is there. Wilbur Ross is there. Cabinet members walking around. Kellyanne comes up to my son, who was 13 at the time, taps him on the shoulder, welcomes him, talks to him for 10 minutes while there's cabinet members waiting to talk to her. I will never forget that, Kellyanne, as long as I live. And, of course, now my son, of course, is your biggest fan ever because you took that 10 minutes to talk to him about just stuff. So thank you for that. He'll never forget that.
Well, God bless him, and I wish him well in high school. That's what I love to do. I love people. I had the absolute privilege to have worked in every single of the 50 states, John, before I took this job as Trump's campaign manager and then obviously counselor in the White House. And it's a real privilege because you literally have to get out of the Beltway, out of the big cities, and into every nook and cranny in this country. When they say, how's it playing in Peoria? I was the person getting on the plane and going and asking people in Peoria, how's it playing? And that brought me to so many different places and spaces around this country, and you get to know the real beauty and richness of America and Americans. And they offer such great advice and insight. It's unclouded, it's unjaundiced. They've thought through these issues, and they have great opinions, really, on any number of different matters. And here we are. I love my job in trying to help with the president's policy agenda every single day, and when I can, to communicate that to the country. And it's a privilege every day to walk in here and meet people like your son who are here because obviously he loves his country, but he loves the Houston Astros. And this is the people's house. You know, the president invites these sports teams, just invited the Little League champions from Louisiana as well this past weekend. He invites them so that America can share in that victory and really, I think, elevate and appreciate and applaud their athletic prowess, their determination, their focus, their commitment, and their achievement. And some people don't want to come, and that's fine. But this is the people's house, and it's something that our wonderful First Lady, Melania Trump, says every time she hosts a big event like one of the holidays. She says, America, welcome to the people's house. That's why you see these long lines of folks coming into the East Wing most days for tours. This is their building, and we want to make that accessible to as many people as possible. It's why the president himself is the most accessible president in American history by far.
Well, look, I want to get to Kellyanne Conway. Thank you for that. I want to get to the G7 summit. We all understand how biased and ridiculous now the fake news, lying media is, the legacy media, which has just become ridiculous. But I thought their coverage of this G7 was beyond the pale of anything I've ever seen. It was tremendously successful for President Trump. Let's start with the tremendous trade agreement, the bilateral trade agreement he made with Japan. And remember, since he came down the escalator, President Trump has been saying he favors bilateral trade agreements between the U.S. and another country rather than the Trans-Pacific Partnership and these other big conglomeration deals.
That's right. he is a fan of bilateral trade deals because he recognizes that's the best, most linear way to serve the American people, American interest, American employers, and America, is to have a one-on-one agreement. So he secured that early on through Chorus with South Korea. He has negotiated a great USMCA, the new NAFTA, bigger, better, more modern, more fair to America, frankly. And we're waiting for Nancy Pelosi to put it to a vote in the House. And in fact, just yesterday, our wonderful Vice President Mike Pence was in South Carolina saying that USMCA is a top legislative priority of the White House, and that he wants these freshman members, who maybe the 31 who represent districts, Democrats who represent districts that Trump and Pence won in 2016, to get on with it and press their leadership to get a vote on USMCA. It's why they're there. They're not there to grab headlines and make noise and make trouble like some of these freshman members seem to love doing. They're there to serve the people. And what better way to serve your constituents than to complete this USMCA, this trade deal, North American trade deal between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. The president's ready to sign that, so let's get it on his desk. But the Japan deal got short shrift by the mainstream media, and I think that's too bad. I did notice, though, John, and I notice this routinely and daily, the regional and local media cover issues like that. They know when the president says this is great for our farmers, our ranchers, really big corn purchase from Prime Minister Abe of Japan, and the president is able to say that he secured market access for agricultural goods such as beef, pork, wheat, dairy products, wine, ethanol, and more, and that in return Japan will purchase large amounts of American corn. That's huge. Also, it got very little coverage that Japan and the United States continue to make significant progress on a digital trade agreement. Talk about modernizing your relationship with another major country and economy in the world. This allows us to expand trade and investment in innovative areas where the United States is already a leader. But these digital trade agreements are right up there with the agricultural and product agreements. And I think that this also allows the United States to reduce or eliminate tariffs on certain industrial products, excluding autos and auto parts. So that's just with Japan. It also means China needs to get back to the table. Their economy is suffering tremendously because of these tariffs, because of the lack of a trade deal. But the president is more patient and more deliberative and takes the long view more than his critics give him credit for. He's not willing to make any deal. He's willing to make the best deal, and that takes time. He was a businessman, not a politician before he got here, John Fredericks, and that means he waits for the deal. It also means he knows that the deal is not done until the principals are back at the table. They agree to all the terms. They sign the deal, and then you usually have a little bit of a waiting period. But the fact is that a man who has made deals, walked away from deals, consummated deals his entire life, outside of the swamp, outside of politics, knows a great deal when he's negotiating one. He's had his team over in China. The Chinese have been here many times, but he's going to wait for the best deal. Do you know how long we've gone as a country on the losing side of our trade with China? And give me a break. It's gone on for decades. And somehow people think the president can just tweet his way into a good deal. It doesn't work that way. He's going through all the regular and proper channels. And essentially what that means is the $500 billion trade deficit we have with China, he's not going to allow that to continue on his watch.
Right.
That these forced technology transfers, the theft of our intellectual property, and let me just put in also the Chinese fentanyl that's poisoning our kids and our communities needs to get the hell out of this country. And President Xi promised his president last year at the G20 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, that was early December, that he would schedule fentanyl and its analogs. They made good on that this past spring, but we're still yet to see regulatory action and punishments that convince us that it's real and lasting. In fact, on Chinese radio just last Friday, they said, gee, the Chinese fentanyl is not our fault. It's actually it's American demand. Basically, they're just supplying the demand.
Right.
It killed 32,000 Americans last year. This president is injecting the word fentanyl into the everyday lexicon. He and the First Lady are heroes on combating drug abuse, including Chinese fentanyl in our communities. We have overall drug overdose deaths down For the first time since 1990, it's 5.1% down. In hard-hit states like Ohio, down 22%. New Hampshire down double digits as well. So we've got a lot on the table with China. The president sent out tweets a couple weeks ago about Hong Kong, about fentanyl, and certainly about trade. But we're going to win the long-term trade war against China. It just takes time, and people need to be patient.
Well, he's wearing them down, and every other president for 50 years has been rolled, and that's really what the Chinese hope would happen, that they would just try to make some deal, not abide by any of the terms, lie, cheat, and steal their way out of it, and go back to normal, where they were getting $500 billion of our cash. But the main thing that the president is trying to do that nobody seems to grasp is get our supply chain back into the United States. This isn't about tariffs, and some of it is evening up the trade deficit. But the main thing is to get our manufacturing, get our supply chain of production back into the United States, where
Correct.
the Chinese have been dumping cheap product in the U.S. subsidized by slave labor and the Chi-Con government subsidizing production in order to get U.S. industries out of certain growth markets of products. That's been their strategy. It's worked. And the president said, no, we're done with that. We're going to get the supply chain back to the U.S., right?
You describe it so cohesively and so coherently, and you're exactly right. How do we know that the president is already achieving this? Well, look no further than of the 6 million plus jobs that have been created since he was elected, John, 1.2 million of them are in manufacturing, construction, warehousing, mining, industries like that were flat on their backs. Basically, people were told, tisk, tisk, go find another line of work. We don't do that in this country anymore. That woman who lost the election, who everybody in the media said would win and still can't get over the loss, whose name I never say anymore lest I be accused of still saying her name, she had promised to put coal miners out of business. Mm-hmm. She made that promise with that usual snarl and the snark and bark that sort of characterized most things that she said. Mm-hmm. And she promised to put them out of business. Not only did that affect her candidacy in places like West Virginia, but also Pennsylvania and Ohio. And guess what? In Kentucky. And it affects, more importantly, affecting in candidacy, it affects the morale and the livelihood of men and women who are in those industries. And this president, when he says forgotten man, forgotten woman, he's thinking of those industries. He's thinking of many things, but he's thinking of those industries predominantly. And he has delivered and will continue to deliver. That's why we need to finish the trade agreement with China, and I predict we will. And that's why we need to get USMCA to a vote in the legislature. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's Congress has time to vote on condemning his tweet. They have a resolution condemning a tweet, but they can't pass a trade agreement. Well, what are they doing up there? And then they're on recess for 6 weeks, as if we missed them, as if we noticed. And then they got all these people calling for impeachment. The stupid Al Green resolution got 95 votes. It wasn't a squeaker. Now you've got all these people calling for impeachment because they can't figure out how to beat him fairly and squarely at the ballot box. They know they think it's going to be binary choice, Trump or not Trump. Guess what, folks? The binary choice is freedom or a lack of freedom. It's capitalism, free market economy versus socialism. It's Green New Deals versus responsible stewardship of the environment, while we at the same time are the largest net exporter of oil and natural gas in the world now because of this president's courage. It takes courage, it takes will, and it also takes time because he inherited, I think, a bipartisan mess of people just looking the other way for too long on too many issues.
Well, he's trying to get things done, and when you look at the USMCA, we had Secretary of Agriculture, my old friend Sonny Perdue, on, former governor of Georgia, and he was just aghast by the whole thing. He's like, the lack of not passing USMCA is hurting farmers. It's hurting dairy farmers. It's hurting manufacturers in the U.S. It's hurting everyday small business Americans. And yet the Congress won't pass it because they don't want to give president a win. And he's like, this isn't a win for the president. This is a win for the American people. And it's being bottled up. So people are suffering in order to hurt the president. Like, how much sense does that make, Kellyanne Conway?
No, it makes zero sense, and America First should mean exactly that you don't wish a recession, you don't wish collusion, you don't wish conspiracy and indictments, you don't call for impeachment, even though there are no high crimes and misdemeanors, which last time I checked the Constitution is what must be present and proven. You don't wish that. And I got to tell you, I mean, maybe I'm a lot older here, but I was raised in a house a mixed political house of Republicans and Democrats. That Democratic Party doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-free markets, pro-small business. But I have to tell you, apart from that, we were raised to respect the office of the presidency and its current occupant, no matter who it is, and regardless of party, even regardless of some of the policies, even if you disagree with them, you have to respect the office of the presidency. And that seems to have crumbled among some of our major institutions. People think they can say anything. But guess what? It doesn't make it true. Most of America sees through it. By the way, most of America doesn't even see it. Have you looked at the ratings? Most of them don't even see it or engage with it. But most of them see through it. I travel in many places and spaces, and people run up to me who you would not expect to say some variation of the following: please tell the president to just keep going. Please tell him, thank you so much for this economy. Thank you for the deregulation, because I was an aspiring small business who could never survive, never get my feet off the ground. Now I'm thriving, not just surviving, but thriving. And they can recite to you, John, chapter and verse of what he's done that affected them personally. Who cares if it got media coverage? They know it. They feel it. They've acted positively because of it. And they see through it. And there are people who also didn't vote for him, voted for him, can't wait to do it again. There are people who are reluctant and skeptical who can't wait to vote, and they say so. So I take it all seriously. I'm not involved in the campaign, obviously. I work in the White House. I take it all seriously. But remember, these battles are not about personalities, and they're not even about politics. They're about principles, and they're about policies. And the binary choice is going to be you don't just run against Donald Trump and the way you mischaracterize him, folks. You run against the Trump economy. You run against the Trump record abroad, where he had command of the G7 no matter what the domestic media say. He's right that our economy is the envy of the world. He's right that other people are now desperately trying to secure trade agreements and secure their borders and get a handle on domestic issues. He's absolutely right that the agreement with Japan was historic and measurable in its impact. And people who are, I call them the wrist flickers, they just flick their wrists, oh yes, that, but. Yeah. Now remember, these same people who are looking for a recession were looking for collusion they've been looking for a recession for 2.5 weeks, they've been looking for collusion for 2.5 years. And I suspect they're not going to find it either. Are we going to have a little softening, a little slowdown in here and there? Perhaps. But that's the ebb and flow of a healthy economy. You have to judge this president on what has changed for the better since he got elected. You have to judge the people, some who have won Pulitzer Prizes, allow me to laugh, and Nobel Prizes, allow me to laugh, in economics, who predicted his presidency would lead to worldwide recession.
Right.
It's been the opposite.
Exactly. Well,
so they should be judged. He'll be judged on his economic record and other things. He's the most pro-life president we've ever had. He's going to find the proper balance between the Second Amendment rights that are enshrined in the Constitution and public safety. The regulation is amazing. The energy and the judges are just incredible. We're nearing 150 federal judges that are Trump nominees on the bench. He will have reconstituted the courts, the federal courts, which have a lot of sway and say over our pocketbook and personal liberty issues. That is measurable impact. People feel it. They see it. They don't need to hear it from a bunch of cranks and critics. I don't know what's got all these people so miserable. It doesn't look very fun to be as miserable as they are. I won't even name them because why make them relevant? Right. But people see through it.
I'd say a final question, Kellyanne. I'm just shocked by a couple days ago, before the G7 summit, the legacy media getting together and creating a false narrative to jawbone a recession, which would punish mostly middle-income and lower-income Americans. I don't think in my lifetime I have ever seen this. Normally you get the media, they're trying to do the opposite, which is encourage people to stay calm, everything's going to be fine, try to bring out some positive news, but they did the exact opposite. The legacy media setting up a plausible situation for a recession, talking about an inverted yield curve that nobody even ever heard of. I mean, what was your reaction to that?
Including them, by the way, including most of them, by the way.
They don't even know what it means.
So as we know from last election and from so many other issues, the tax cut, Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. So many things the president's been able to do, pulling out of the Paris Accords, keeping his promise to move the embassy to Jerusalem and to recognize that as the capital of Israel, as Israelis do. Again and again, he has proven the critics and naysayers wrong, and he's done that by sheer will and courage and action, but he's done it in another way that answers your question, which is they think just willing it makes it happen. They think just saying it makes it true. And that is just not the case. People know that they have more economic freedom, more economic wherewithal. They know there are over 7 million available jobs, exceeds the number of people who are looking for new jobs. They know that they don't just have job availability, indeed job security, which is different from the previous administration, but they have job mobility. John, if they want to, they can go get a job. They have a job, but they can go look for a job that's closer to home or that has better health care benefits.
Exactly.
Or that has a track for improvement and advancement and promotion. So people know what their 401k say. They know that the stock market is way up under this president, and a lot of middle-class Americans who are being fed this steady diet of recession from the same people who scream Russia, Russia for 2.5 years. They know the difference between what they're told and what they see. In other words, what they see in their bank statements, what they see in their savings. So more Americans are saving money now. Fewer of them are dipping into savings to meet basic household expenses than before. And by the way, if none of that were true, then why the heck is Joe Biden trying to take credit for the Trump economy? Exactly. So he proves my point every single day. When he is coherent, he proves my point every single day. When he tries to pretend that this is the Obama-Biden economy, I could tell you it was Obama-Biden Care that left 28 million Americans with no health insurance of any kind, and this president is fixing to fix that. And it was the Obama-Biden administration that ignored the rise of fentanyl. Even the Washington Post ran an amazing expose on that. It was Obama-Biden that did absolutely nothing after the mass shootings, didn't even run on so-called gun control in 2008, 2012 because they know they couldn't. So these people didn't do Medicare for all. They didn't do Green New Deal because they know it's unsustainable, unaffordable, untenable, and frankly, un-American.
Kellyanne Conway, senior counsel and advisor to President Trump. We're out of time for this segment. I really want to thank you for your time.
God bless
today.
you, John, and God bless your listeners, and certainly your son as he begins his high school career.
Thank you.
Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
For your own son also. John Fredericks Radio Network signing off.